My name is David.
And my name is Jason.
And this is Discern Realities, a Dungeon World podcast. Our first segment is What Happened Here Recently?
So I wanted to talk about our kickoff session for a World of Dungeons series that you are playing in with me, David, called Songs of Bellet Osc. How does that sound?
Great. I remember you talking a little bit about Bellet Osc a while back, and I was really excited to see that you put it back on the calendar to run in that session, or in that setting again.
Yeah, it's a fun setting, right? It's pretty cool. So Bellet Osc, for listeners who maybe didn't hear the previous episode when I mentioned it kind of briefly, this was actually a setting that came from, it was inspired by a little bit of text in the Vornheim book by Zach Smith. I think Zach also ran a campaign of D&D in the city of Bellet Osc as well. I'm not super familiar with all that stuff. I kind of made my own Bellet Osc, but we made our own Bellet Osc, I should say. It's an asylum city. That's the idea. It's this city that is very ancient, that is, as we're telling it anyway, has a sort of Alice in Wonderland quality to it. Like, a lot of the people who live there are mad, but it's like much more like bloody and violent and kind of comedic also. And so that's the basic setting. This ancient city that's essentially an asylum. It has these guardians that roam around that are kind of like orderlies. It's got the mad people, but it also has people who have managed to scrape out a living in the city, right? Who are not insane. It was super fun. Had a great time. I knew everybody would love the setting. Everybody got into that part of it, and that was really, really fun. And I mostly just wanted to talk about a technique that I've kind of mentioned obliquely before on this show and our other show, the Gauntlet podcast, but that I've never really explicitly, put down in words or whatever. And it's this technique that I have come to start calling painting the scene. And the idea is, as the players, as their characters enter a new environment, an environment that I would like to have certain things tied to it, certain thematic ideas or certain story ideas tied to it, as they enter this new environment, I ask the players, show me how you know this city is ancient. Tell me how you know this city is filled with mad people, right? We did a lot of that this session, a lot of this sort of like painting the scene kind of stuff. And I really like it. I think it's a great technique for getting sort of player buy-in into the setting. What do you think?
Oh yeah, 100% agree. This is kind of part of the conversation we've been having as an ongoing thing, where we've talked about how we make the journey more evocative and character-centric. We've talked about how we make them view a city a certain way and paint it. And now we're kind of talking about how you can do that almost everywhere.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, and it's not so much like I should clarify, it's not the sort of like establishing or first session questions where I'm curious about your character's specific connection or history or backstory, right? It's more, I just want you as a player to tell me what your character sees that reinforces this theme I'm interested in exploring, right? And so we did it in the kickoff, right? Like the very first scene, when you guys were at the palazzo of this Medusa noblewoman named Estragel, I asked you guys, tell me one of two things. Either how you know that this palazzo is owned by a Medusa, or how you know that this is a place where secrets are traded like currency, right? And everyone just did a great job. Like, there was just so many like cool descriptions of like their characters roaming through this palazzo and giving these details. It just created such a vibrant and rich scene that I don't think I could have done on my own.
Yeah, and even if you had, it would have been very impressive that you did, and we all would have gotten the same picture in our heads, but we wouldn't have had that same level of like interaction and satisfaction.
Yeah, the buy-in would be totally different, right? I have these very, very aggressive this questioning process, right? This where I'm constantly having the players like fill in details and help me explore themes and describe things. And I just think honestly, it's something that has taken me sort of a long time to develop, a sort of like play style that's taken me a while to kind of develop and get it to where I really like it. But other people can kind of jump ahead in the line, right? I mean, you start doing stuff like this, I think it's just going to take your GMing up to a whole nother place.
Yeah, I get the benefit of having gamed with you, so I've been doing similar things, and it's just so much more satisfying as the DM to do this, because it's, instead of you having to come up with everything and doing a massive amount of prep, and then try and tell a cool story and entertain, you get to be entertained by your players, and it's so good.
Yeah, it just creates a more like a two-way. It's just more of a two-way conversation at that point, right? I mean, I think whenever people say like, oh, we're just playing in the GM's story, or oh, I'm on a railroad, or whatever, right? All those sort of like things we like to criticize GMs for. It's not usually because the GM did a bad job, right? Normally the GM did a pretty good job, right? They've probably spent a lot of time thinking about this stuff. But they are kind of dictating it to the players, right? And I think that's where the problem comes in. You're taking away chances for the players to get really, really involved and engaged. I thought your angle kite thing that you talked about a couple episodes ago was really cool, because you did something a little different in that it was... it was a kind of a recurring thing, and you used it as a way of like tying together your different like groups of players. We actually had a question come in from a listener a couple weeks ago asking that very thing. Like, I'm in an environment where I have lots of different players coming every week. Like, it changes all the time. Like, how do you help create that continuity? And I liked your sort of like adaptation of the sort of painting the scenes questions, adapting it to make it be a way of creating continuity between the tables. I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, it's been helpful. It's nice to not have to try and answer that question in any more of a complicated way. But yeah, I love this painting the scene. I love Bellet Osc and the things that we said about it, with all of the graffiti and the ancientness of the cities underneath the city, and I can't wait to jump back in next week on that game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty badass. I already love it. Yeah, I just think we're creating a really wonderful world. And it's kind of the second time I've gotten to do it, right? Like the first time I ran Bellet Osc, I got a slightly different result, but it was the same sort of, they're very similar, sort of, like I said, like thematically, flavor-wise, they're very similar. It's just kind of fun to see. From the GM's perspective, it's really fun to see players like interpret the setting and interpret the themes differently.
Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What Should I Be on the Lookout For? Jason, you have down that we should be on the lookout for Legacy Weapon. I haven't heard of that. Tell me about it.
Not many people will have heard of this. So the Legacy Weapon is an addition, I guess. It's not really a hack. I guess it's a hack. But it's a sort of like supplemental thing for Dungeon World, created by... the guys over at Misdirected Mark, that podcast, they're big fans of us.
Oh yeah, they say some nice things about us.
Yeah, they're great. So it was Phil and Chris over at Misdirected Mark. They also run this publishing company called Encoded Designs, and they mostly do like kind of trad stuff, but they have this thing called the Legacy Weapon for Dungeon World. And what it is it's basically a sort of little toolbox, I guess, that allows one player and one GM to have like a full dungeon crawl experience, right? So it's a way of doing the 1v1, even if you have, this is something we've talked about before, right? Even if you have, you don't have a full party, right? Like, so like you're missing certain things, like, spellcasters and healing and all that, right?
Okay, I'm super, super interested in this, because you may not know this, but I'm pretty sure you and I have been doing that. Yeah, sometimes people die because we don't have really great tools.
Right. Well, so here's the deal. The Legacy Weapon, the way it works is it's essentially it's several different like sheets, I guess, as far as I could tell, the playtest materials at least. I got a chance to playtest it, I should mention, with Phil at Dreammation. It was Phil and myself, and then Senda from their show Pandas Talking Games, and she's a super geek. She was there as well, kind of taking notes on the playtest. So, but Phil ran it for me. The idea is you have these sheets. Part of it is a questionnaire about this weapon called the Legacy Weapon. And you answer the questionnaire, and as you answer the questionnaire, it causes certain things on the GM side. The GM makes certain decisions based off your answers. to determine who were the previous owners of the legacy weapon and what their powers and talents and skills were that are now a part of the weapon. Okay. So it's like the weapon acquires a little bit of each of its owners, right?
Oh man, I'm super into this.
Yeah.
I wrote a game for a little contest several years back that was all about the weapon.
I know.
And this is like
there's a lot of
really
familiarity
bringing that
here,
back.
right?
Yeah, this is cool.
So I knew you would like this. So okay, so you have so you end up with this like extra sheet in your playbook that's essentially like the stats of the legacy weapon, okay? And it has like it has little blocks that tell you like who the previous owner of the weapons were and what like ability they give the weapon. And those abilities are essentially just like sort of mission critical party things, like cleric, like being able to cast real specific cleric spells or real specific wizard spells, or being able to do certain types of other skills in the other classes, right? And so as you're playing, you have your playbook like normal. I was a fighter, and you have your playbook like normal, and you can interact with the weapon in such a way that you can access its power, but it's not a foolproof thing, okay? There's like a lot of danger involved in it, and the weapon is it's implied that it's kind of sentient and has its own sort of like agenda, I guess. But if you can successfully tap into the weapon's power, there's a move, there's a couple of moves associated with it. You can access these other abilities. Here's the cool bit, and this is actually a suggestion from me. I was doing it just as I played, but then I recommended to Phil that they should add it into the thing itself, and he liked the idea. Whenever you first tap into a brand new power, you dictate a scene showing kind of like a critical moment of that previous owner's time with the weapon, right? So as you're playing, you're also building up the story of the weapon.
Oh man, that's so cool.
That's pretty cool, huh?
So what did you think about it when you were done? Like, did you like it?
It was great.
Did you think it worked?
We ran through about, I don't know. So it comes with a dungeon as well. It's the materials for the legacy weapon, and then also like comes with a sort of sample adventure that you can run the player through. And we ran through that sample adventure. It was great. A pretty standard dungeon crawl, but with like a little bit of, it has like some kind of questions that let you kind of fill in some of the details. But basically, it's just a little dungeon crawl, and it was great. I mean, I was moving through the areas. It felt like a dungeon crawl, but it was just me. There wasn't like a whole party, and I felt like I had like the necessary tools to do the dungeon crawl, but I was also kind of like getting this other story about the weapon, which was fun. And there was some danger too. Like the weapon was kind of like fickle, right? And so, it was fun. It was super cool. It worked really well. I remember when it was over, I was thinking, oh, this is really good, Phil. Like, I like it. I think you're onto something here, because I could see you taking this and basically it's a whole new implementation of Dungeon World. It's like a completely sort of like revamped thinking of Dungeon World. It's almost like a whole new game in a way. And, but it's cool. It's like you can have a sort of full Dungeon World experience with just you and one other person. That's pretty awesome.
Man, I'm just like throwing it out there, but if they want to like let us use this, I wouldn't mind Ramshackle having a legacy Ramshackle weapon.
I already brought it up. I've already talked to Phil about it. That might be a thing we do. I don't know. It's not released yet. I think it comes out in maybe as of the day of this recording, maybe like in a month or so. We'll try to get a link.
Kickstarter or what?
No, I think that you're going to release it PDF through drive-through. But whenever it's ready, we'll follow up with listeners, and also I'll try to get a link from Phil and Chris, and we'll put something in the show notes so people want to check out whatever they have right now.
Awesome. I love it. It is so my thing, and I hope that they listen to this episode and hear me fawn over it. And how wonderful would it be if Ramshackle had a legacy weapon? Because we have already described him as one of many Ramshackles.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's a good touch. Yeah, it's super cool. Listeners, just kind of keep your eyes open for it. I don't know what the exact release date's going to be, but it's coming up soon.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What Here Is Not What It Appears to Be. Jason, this week, I want to revisit the Undertake a Perilous Journey move. We've talked about it before. We've talked about ways that you can really get characters to buy in and make it a longer, more engaging scene. And I do that. I do those things that you talk about, asking additional questions, and I follow, oftentimes, the kinds of questions that you're doing. But I change the questions around sometimes because I change the move up a bit. I don't know if I can fairly say that I changed the move, because the move only reads when you travel through hostile territory as the trigger. And I often encourage my players to travel in ways that are not just walking through a forest.
So what we're talking about then is just what does it mean to undertake a perilous journey? Exactly.
So obviously there's, when you're going to be doing the Lord of the Rings style, wander through the forest and the wilderness to get where you need to get. That's very classic and that's fun. But, there's lots of other ways you can travel in a fantastic universe. But the move also has you using a trailblazer, a quartermaster, and a scout. So sometimes you have to maybe change those up or leave one out or interpret that a little differently.
Well, so give me an example before we go any further. Give me an example of like a more fantastical perilous journey that's not just going through the wilderness.
Yeah, so recently I have had 2 rather fantastic journeys for my players, where one time they are riding on a giant, and the giant is kind of a hapless giant. He's got round his neck a large, what looks like a birdhouse structure that the players can be inside of, their characters can be inside of. And he's also covered with all kinds of rigging so that they can move about his body and like speak to him and get up
Nice.
high and see.
Okay.
So that's one. Another was these cloud merchants, which they are a part of the Last Days of Anglekite setting book. They are just briefly mentioned here and there and never really explained. So I just took it to mean that they got from city to city by pushing all of their belongings kind of in a pile and then doing a ritual that causes the morning dew to form a cloud around them that looks like and is functionally like a ship that would sail but can fly through the air.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I guess like what we're discussing then is, what do you do in the instance, like one of those instances where certain of the roles may not make any sense? Like
right.
Scout.
In the
maybe.
in the conventional way, they may not make much sense.
Well, so how did you handle it, or how do you handle it?
Right. So you figure out a way where like that role would still be meaningful based on like the penalty that comes from it. Like, do they see something that would be a danger? That's basically the outcome of the scout.
More of a lookout than a scout.
Yeah, more of a lookout than a scout. In both of those instances, it would probably be like a lookout kind of situation. Trailblazer, the outcome is, do you end up where you are trying to end up in the time that you are trying to end up there? For the giant, that was convincing him not to wander.
Okay. I like that. It's good. Yeah.
For the cloud merchants, it was interpreting these incredibly complicated wind pattern maps that were constantly changing as like the temperature went up and down and like different winds came into play. So and then the quartermaster, you can always do the quartermaster pretty easily. Like, you're gonna have to eat. It's just kind of fun to think about, well, how do you prepare food on a ship made of cloud? And turns out there's a lot of lightning involved. There's pretty neat little set dressing there.
I think the Undertake a Perilous Journey move is pretty bad. As a general matter, I don't love it because some of the results are just a little boring. Like, oh, Trailblazer, you get a 7 to 9. It takes you, I think on a 7 to 9, like it takes you longer, or no, you get there in just the normal amount of time. On a 10 plus, you get there a day early or whatever. Like, it's just super dull, right? I like the idea of, and this is where I'm kind of pushing toward here as a custom move. I like the idea of reinterpreting the results, right, to be something more meaningful in the fiction. I've encountered this a lot. I've played lots and lots of Dungeon World in lots of circumstances that are not just people roaming through the wilderness, right? Most recently, I did a Spelljammer thing, right, called Wild Space. And I basically heavily modify Undertake a Perilous Journey. I think I even have at this point, I think for Wild Space, or for Spelljammer, I think this last go, I did like a whole different custom move for traveling through Wild Space. But in the past, though, I've adjusted a little bit. So like the Trailblazer is not so much a Trailblazer on magical flying ship as much as they are a navigator, right? And so, like you said, looking at star charts and interpreting them. And so I changed the role to be intelligence rather than wisdom, right? I've made adjustments like that make more sense mechanically, that make more sense fictionally. I think I eliminated Scout altogether on that, just because on a ship like with a crew of people, like what is the Scout doing? You can't.
I had my scouts in the crow's nest. Like he's the only one who can see further than the edge of the ship.
Yeah, well, yeah, I could see that. I guess I just got rid of it because I was thinking, well, gosh, anybody could be on lookout at any given time. Why is it this guy's job, right? So I just got rid of it. I mean, to my mind, like I don't think it really affects things that much, So what I ended up doing for that one was I did a custom move essentially that just had like the navigator, the quartermaster, and the person piloting the ship, right? And they had different sort of stats that were involved, and their outcomes were a little different, but they all kind of like were the same general thrust of the Undertake a Perilous Journey move. Are we going to get there on time? Are we going to run into trouble? Are we going to be completely depleted by the end of this or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah. I agree with you that like maybe like the fictional outcome like of two of them has to do with rations, and I'm not like super concerned with like how carefully my players are keeping track of their rations. But I love the scenes that I get out of these because we ask so many questions about it, and it really paints a good picture. And it's honestly just like a good time for the party to get to know each other a lot of the time, because these journeys, at least in my games, often happen early on where they're trying to get to the place where the dungeoning is going to happen or the problem is going to be taken care of. And it's a great opportunity for my players to get familiar with one another and their characters.
Yeah, that's how I normally do Undertake a Perilous Journey. Like, most of the games I run, it is just the characters traveling through wilderness to get somewhere, right? And that first session is usually by the end of the first session, they're at the place, right? Or near the end of the first session, they're at the place where the rest of the series, the rest of the adventure is going to take place. And I use that Undertake a Perilous Journey as what is essentially the first session of other Apocalypse World-based games. So in Monster Hearts, you use that first session to just follow the characters around and see what they get up to and just because you're trying to learn about them, right? Same thing with Apocalypse World, has the same similar thing. Like first session, there's no real plan. You're just kind of watching the characters and see how they interact, see what they get up to. It's the exact same thing. I use Undertake a Perilous Journey. That first session, it's almost the first thing we do of a new series, a new adventure, where we just see the characters be together, right? And this goes back to the previous conversation we had a long time ago about this, where I have like I have a lot of like built-in questions that I ask alongside the move itself, right? Just to help flesh out those dynamics within the party.
Right. And I use it in a very similar way, and it works great for that. And it has really low stakes things. You've got the rations happening. People are still rolling dice and like interpreting those results. So you're introducing the mechanics if they're new to the game, which this past game where we did this, I did have someone who was brand new to the game, and I was very excited about that. I think that even players who may not quite get the Dungeon World experience, they're coming from a more traditional experience or another game entirely, very quickly, because you do this first session like this, very quickly get how the game is supposed to work. And then you can get to your problem. Yeah,
for me, Undertake a Perilous Journey is a terrific opportunity to set expectations at the table, right? I'm going to set the expectation that you are all together, and you have to be together, and you have to get to know one another, and you have to learn how to interact with one another. I'm going to set the expectation that I, as a GM, am going to be asking you lots of questions, and I hope you're ready to answer them. If not, be ready for the idea of answering them, right? And then get in the right headspace. I'm going to show you what, how die results go, right? Like if you get a miss on this, what does that mean, right? So yeah, I think it's you're right. I think I've never thought about that way until just now, till when you said it. But my first sessions are always the Perilous Journey, right? And seeing the party through all these different angles through the lens of this move, which I often tinker with and adjust and change as needed, right? So to get back to what we were originally talking about, I think as written, it's not a great move. I think it really, really benefits from like a lot of critical thinking from the GM.
It does, but it's such a useful move.
It is. It's a super useful move. It's probably like the best. It's the most dependable thing I do in a series. Like I know what kind of result I'm going to get out of it. The way I run it, and it's useful. Like it's like I said, it's really good at setting expectations and getting the party kind of like in the same headspace and getting them together. But as written, it's not a great move. It's kind of like not
it's
great.
it's the extra bits that we're doing that like really make it like it's one of my favorite parts of kicking off a new campaign.
I really hope DW2E, if that's ever a thing, I really hope they incorporate a lot of our wisdom. I hope they incorporate like a lot of Jason Lutz's wisdom, like with Perilous Wilds, right? Like I hope that they sort of readdress some of these things in the second edition, like to sort of flesh these things out and make them more interesting.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is what here is useful or valuable to me.
So I am presently collecting Dwarven Shrines. I'm collecting Dwarven Shrines for an upcoming issue of our zine Codex Iron. And I thought I would just share one of those because it's pretty cool and I like it a lot. So this is so when I say shrine, that is it's for Dungeon World. It's a description of the shrine itself. It is the custom move associated with the shrine. It's a spell and then a magic item. We're going to have several of these for these Dwarven gods in Codex Iron. So I just want to kind of preview one of those things right now. This is by our friend Fowler. It's called, it's Gornorn the Foolish, Leader of the Lost, Dwarven God of Wrongness. Okay. Born last of the gods, Gornorn arrived too late to take part in the construction of the world. Eager to catch up to his brothers and sisters, carving out the first tunnels of the Dwarven people, he unwittingly started on the wrong side. Hearing the laughter and mockery of his fellows, he refused to accept his mistake and decided all the others must be fools. Gornorn still stubbornly believes that he is correct in all things, and all others must be wrong. He never ventures to the surface, believing it to be a bottomless pit, and stands upside down on the ceiling wherever he goes. He tries endlessly to correct the, quote, mistakes of the other gods, and offers his wisdom to any dwarf who will listen. He appears as a particularly short and stubborn dwarf in copper-colored armor and helm. He will try to convince listeners to accept his way of thinking, which is plainly wrong. Gornorn is very proud of his intellect and will be overjoyed if someone accepts or pretends to accept his teachings. He is also quick to anger if mocked. Very few dwarves openly worship Gornorn, and most blame him for misfortune, vandalism, and stupidity. Dwarven scholars sometimes keep a small idol of Gornorn to remind themselves and their students of the dangers of too much pride and stubbornness. So, would you like to read the custom move for the shrine?
Yeah. When you stand under his shrine and praise the wisdom, independence, and keen perception of Gornorn, roll plus charisma. On a 10+, choose one ability. On a 7-9, choose one ability, but it is unreliable and dangerous. On a 6-, Gornorn does not appreciate your mockery. Here's the choices. You may reverse your perspective and walk on the ceiling as if it was the floor. You may ignore one type of damage by keeping your eyes closed and humming. You may speak, but not understand, any language of people, animals, or creatures by imitating their sounds and postures.
And this shrine set also comes with a cleric spell. It's a level 7 cleric spell called Divine Expertise. Your greater understanding of the universe allows you to pierce falsehood and misconception. Instead of spouting lore, tell the GM something useful and interesting about a subject you know nothing about.
And then we have the one magic item, Gornon's Resolute Shovel. While holding this worn and rusty shovel, you are filled with confidence and cannot be distracted from your goal. Gain immunity to all magical suggestion, illusion, or imprisonment. It's
fun, huh? I like it. I think it's really fun.
This is a very, very Fowler.
It is, yeah. He likes
Very
snakes and upside down things. Those are his two things he's really into.
Like snakes and upside down things. Yes, yes. Or MacGyvering things.
That's true too. No, super fun.
Yeah.
We're gonna have several of these. I think like maybe 2 or 3 more of these little sets in Codex Iron, which comes out April 1st on our Patreon.
Awesome. Looking forward to checking out the rest of those. Let's move on to our next segment.
This episode of Discern Realities is being sponsored by Scablands Press. So listeners, I have received a sneak peek of the text for Slade's newest game, Dust Fog and Glowing Embers. This game is one that he's going to be kickstarting very soon, March 22nd, and we're going to probably have some more to say about it on the show in the weeks to come. But for now, I just wanted to give you a little preview of what the game is about, direct from the text here. What if all the systems that were supplanted by science were the winners? That is, what if science lost? For example, what if alchemy rose to prominence instead of chemistry? What if numerology were the main branch of mathematics? What if the 4 humors told us a lot about human behavior rather than psychology? What if the reading of goat entrails were the most accurate method of weather prediction? In Dust, Fog, and Glowing Embers, you enter a world at the cusp of the industrial age. You embody characters that have to face a world in which all kinds of strange physical laws apply. Therefore, this is a science fiction game, although it is set in a version of the past. So that sounds pretty great to me. I've read the text. It's really cool. It's based off the indie hack, but it's a complete game. You don't need the indie hack to play it if you have this text. He's going to be kickstarting it March 22nd, like I said, and we're going to revisit it around that time. But I just want to give you a little taste so you can be looking forward to it. It's a really, really cool game. I think you're going to like it a lot. So that's all I've got. Thanks again to Scablands for sponsoring the show.
Our next segment is What is About to Happen.
This is our ongoing comic strip AP featuring the adventures of Ramshackle Crow. And when we last saw Ramshackle, he was in a room with Urbina Castafiel and Scabs. Scabs had accidentally set off a trap that caused a Hellhound to be teleported into the room. The room is really smoky. Everybody had kind of a hard time seeing, but you managed to hook the Hellhound, and you're kind of holding the Hellhound in place with Catspaw's chain and hook. Scabs is getting ready to stab the Hellhound, but you can see his ribcage is exposed on the side of his body. You can see like a roiling ball of fire. He's getting ready to breathe fire on Scabs, and Scabs doesn't see it coming. What do you do?
Right. So that is right where my hook is lodged in there, right? Right in that exposed ribcage. Sure. I think if I do this quick enough, I might be able to dislodge that rib, and all that fire might just erupt out the side and not be able to, it'd be like a lung puncture. Like he wouldn't be able to breathe it out. It would come out the side instead and not be able to hurt Scabs.
Do a defy danger with intelligence for quick thinking.
7.
It's going to work. You hook his rib cage and you pull and crack open the ribs, and the fire will kind of like be unleashed from the side of the Hellhound's body, and he won't be able to breathe it on Scabs. That's great. However, the fire seems to have like almost a life of its own or something, or like its own energy, and it's like racing down the chain at you. What do you do?
Well, since I just kind of got that chain free, I will probably try and like whip it and see if like the fire comes off, and if not, I'll let go of that thing.
Yeah, just do a defy danger with dexterity.
Hey, 13.
That works. Just give me the whole scene. What does it look like?
Yeah, so the hound has that hook from Catspaw Patterson lodged in its side. It's wrapped around Urbina. I'm holding onto it and pulling very tight, right as Scabs is about to try and stick it in its mouth, and we see that glow of flame. So quickly, I just drop down on the chain so that I get all that weight immediately cracking that rib, and that fire comes racing out. It's like spiraling up the chain, and I think it has even like a little like magical face or something as it's like spiraling around the chain. Urbina sees it, and I see it, and I just crack the chain, and it manages to dislodge this whatever fire spirit, and its lack of any more combustible material just means it dissipates before it can redirect and get us.
Nice.
What's the situation with the hound now?
Yeah, so you hear a yelp, like, arr, arr. You see, like, Scabs basically holding the Hellhound up by from the head, by the hilt of his sword, right? The hound just kind of hanging there. Scabs kind of stuck it up into the roof of the Hellhound's mouth, right? And he quickly kicks the hound off his sword and turns to look at you all and says, "Oops."
And I look at Urbina because she had some snarky thing to say, and I'm like, see, he's completely capable.
Look, we're on the same side here, Ramshackle. Just let me go. Let's work on this together.
What can you do with your hands untied that I can't do for you? You can still talk. I haven't gagged you yet.
Fine. Well, what's your plan for getting us out of here, then?
Well, since we already triggered the door, we might as well open it. Scabs, I believe it's my turn to open the door.
No. That's wrong. That's wrong. I think the rule that we've established is the turn order gets reset upon entering a new dimension.
Did we talk about new dimensions? I don't... And I'm, shuffling through some papers. We have some little thing written down, whose turn it is. I'm like, you're right. The dimension clause. I remember the dimension clause now.
He's like, but maybe we work on this one together. I disarm the trap, and you unlock the door, eh?
Hey, that sounds great to me. How about we make that the standing arrangement and tear up this old one?
He gives you a sideways glance, neither confirming nor denying this new plan. So the door, what do you do?
So I'll approach the door, quickly, pat it, as just to check and see if it has any more residual magic.
Nah, I think it's good, yeah.
And then I will try the handle.
And it's locked.
Who locks doors in a dimension like this? All right, my tool is Scabs.
And he goes into his rucksack and he pulls out, the thieves' tools, little picks and little springs and clamps and things like that, right? I'll remind you that the door is a large brass door set in, there's a circular wall in the room. The room is kind of a circular room that's sort of a black obsidian, right? And there are 3 such doors.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and just give me your tricks of the trade or whatever it's called.
Yeah. As I'm rummaging with the lock, I look back at Urbina, remember the last time we did this? You were so cute in how you wanted to know how it all worked. And I got an 8.
All right, let's take a look at the move. You're going to do it, but I will offer you 2 options. Okay. Between suspicion, danger, or cost. I will offer you an option between suspicion and cost. On the one hand, it's going to work, but whatever entity or being controls this room or put it here is going to know that there was someone in it. Or it's an incredibly complex lock, and you basically break your lock picking tools in order to get into it. You have to destroy them.
Okay, and I've only got the 1 set of those, so that seems like a bad idea. So I probably better just make it suspicious.
Okay, well, go ahead and just give me the scene. What does it look like as you're opening this door?
Yeah, so I'm just staring at Urbina as I'm picking the lock. And, do it perfectly still. Just staring into her eyes, just, you remember this.
She goes, "Oh, you're so good."
Oh, that's what the ladies tell me. And then I, turn the tumblers, and it just, is, I don't know, it's probably just a really loud screech or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there's kind of a clank, and it just kind of pushes open, as you would expect it to.
Okay, so it wasn't immediately apparent why it raises suspicion.
Oh, no, it wasn't. There's an entity that controls this room.
Oh, lovely.
And your Ramshackle's probably not even aware of it, that he's under. This is out of character knowledge, right?
Yeah. All right then, Urbina. Ladies first.
She bounds up rather surprisingly well, considering her arms are bound. She stands up really quickly, and she says, "My goodness, you made such short work of that lock. You are a very, very good thief."
Don't have to flatter me. I already know I'm a good thief.
And she steps in through the door. Do you guys follow her?
Yeah. I will follow immediately behind her, and Scab's behind me.
The door opens up to what is essentially just a ledge, okay? Barely like 5 feet square. And Urbina says, "Well, there's not really anywhere to go, I fear," she says. She turns back to you. And if you look out, if you kind of step out into this little ledge with her, you will see that this room you're in appears to be suspended in space, maybe. It's a vast, vast cavernous space filled with pistons and gears and cogs, massive, like cogs the size of football fields, right? You're inside some sort of enormous labyrinthine machine. And I think that's where we'll end the session.
That just leaves one final question. Who's really in control here?
Discern Realities is a production of the Gauntlet Gaming Community and Podcast Network. I think that's our official thing now, the Gauntlet Gaming Community and Podcast Network. I like that.
That has a nice ring to it.
It rolls off the tongue. We're a production of the Gauntlet. We can be found at gauntlet-rpg.com. On that website, you can find links to our other podcasts, including the Gauntlet podcast, Plus One Forward, which is our show about Powered by the Apocalypse games, Comic Strip AP, which is fucking excellent, where David and I have another show, and a bunch of our community members actually have little AP shows over there, so go check that out. They're all really great. And we are relaunching Pocket Size Play very soon. That's coming pretty quickly with the release of some Monster Hearts 2 AP. So go check that out. Keep your eyes open on the website. We can be found on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG. And if you love the show and would like to support us on Patreon, we'll take it. It's patreon.com/gauntlet.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, listeners. That's our show. Oh, Dice Stream, I will miss you. Not that much. 7.